The cafeteria smelled like burnt synthetic protein and regret. Commander Vyx'thal of the Galactic Coalition Defense Academy stood frozen in the doorway, all four of his eye stalks focused on the single human cadet sitting alone at table 17. She was eating. Not the carefully portioned nutrient paste allocated to trainees. Not the regulated energy bars designed for optimal performance. No, this creature, this impossible thing called recruit Maya Reeves, was consuming what appeared to be an entire roasted bird. With her bare hands, grease glistened on her fingers as she tore off another chunk of meat, chewing with an expression of pure satisfaction. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Kryn, his scales rippling with anxiety. "Should we intervene?" Vyx'thal's mandibles clicked together, the Valkyrie equivalent of a bitter laugh. "Intervene? How exactly? She hasn't violated any regulations. I checked, twice. There's no rule against bringing your own food because, well, who in the 17 hells would want to? But sir, the Death Garden trials begin in 4 hours. She should be meditating, preparing mentally, perhaps making peace with her gods." "Oh, I'm quite certain she's making peace with something," Vyx'thal muttered, watching Maya lick sauce off her thumb. The Death Garden. Even the name made seasoned warriors flinch. It was the Coalition's final test. A nightmarish obstacle course designed by the cruelest tactical minds across 47 species. In the 200 cycles since its creation, it had claimed the lives of over 3,000 recruits. Participation was voluntary, but completion was the only path to Special Operations Command. Last cycle, 16 cadets had entered. 4 survived. None were unscathed. And this human, this soft-skinned, fragile-looking being from a backwater planet that had only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 rotations ago, was treating it like a casual afternoon appointment. Vyx'thal approached her table, his talons clicking against the metal floor. Maya looked up, smiled, and gestured at the empty seat across from her. "Commander, want some chicken? I made extra." Made. She had cooked this herself. In the academy kitchens, "Recruit Reeves," he began, settling his bulk onto the bench. "Are you aware that the Death Garden trials commence at 1400 hours? Yup." She pulled off another piece of meat. "Plenty of time. And you're eating." "Well spotted, sir. Nothing gets past those eye stalks." She grinned, and he couldn't tell if she was being insolent or genuinely friendly. Humans were exhausting that way. Most recruits spend the pre-trial hours in contemplation, in prayer, in fear. Most recruits aren't running on an empty stomach, sir. Fear I can handle, hunger makes me cranky. She paused, tilting her head. "You know, back home there's this saying, never trust a skinny chef." Well, same principle applies to combat. Never trust someone who skips meals before a life or death situation. Kryn had followed at a respectful distance, his translator crackling as it processed her words. "That makes no logical sense whatsoever, doesn't it though?" Maya wiped her hands on a cloth and leaned back. "Look, my body needs fuel. Carbs for energy, protein for muscle recovery, fats for endurance. I'm about to run, climb, fight and probably bleed for the next 8 to 12 hours. Would you rather I do that on an empty tank, or properly fueled?" Vyx'thal's primary eye stalk swiveled to Kryn, then back to Maya. "You speak of this as though you expect to survive." "Well, yeah. I didn't come here to die, Commander. I came here to pass." The cafeteria had gone quiet. Other recruits, other species had gathered at a distance. Everyone knew what the Death Garden meant. Everyone had heard the statistics. The Thraxian heavy worlder, who'd lost 3 limbs. The Signari flight specialist who'd been driven mad by the sensory deprivation chamber. The Mordesh tactical genius who'd simply stopped, his will broken by the 3rd stage. "Recruit Reeves," Vyx'thal said slowly. "In the entire history of the Academy, only 12% of entrants survive the Death Garden. Of those, fewer than 3% achieve passing scores. No human has ever attempted it." "Well," Maya said, standing and gathering her things. "Sounds like we're overdue for a win then." She walked past him, past the staring crowd, past the memorial wall where the names of the fallen were etched in 14 different scripts. She didn't pause, didn't pray, Didn't even glance at the names. Vyx'thal found himself following her. You understand what you're walking into, yes? The first stage alone has a 47% casualty rate. I read the briefing materials, sir. Reading and experiencing are vastly different concepts. She stopped, turned to face him fully. Her eyes, those strange forward-facing predator eyes, met his without hesitation. Commander, with all due respect, I grew up on a planet where the weather actively tries to kill you, where invisible microorganisms can end your life in hours, where we have spiders the size of dinner plates, snakes that can drop you in seconds, and we literally decided the best response to all of that was to just domesticate the predators and call them pets. Kren made a choking sound. You keep predators in your dwellings? Dogs? Cats? Ferrets? Yeah. Some folks even keep reptiles. Had a buddy who owned a python. Beautiful creature. Anyway, my point is, I'm not unfamiliar with environments that want me dead. She checked her chrono. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to hydrate and stretch. Don't want to pull a hamstring in there. She left them standing in the corridor. She's insane, Kren whispered. Perhaps, Vyx'thal replied. Or perhaps we've grown too comfortable with our fear. 1400 hours arrived with the inevitability of stellar collapse. The Death Garden staging area looked like the inside of a corpse. All black walls, harsh lighting, and the smell of recycled air mixed with something sharp and medical. 12 recruits stood in formation, representing 8 different species. The Cortex twins, hulking masses of muscle and chitin. Jivara, a selenite, whose crystalline structure could withstand pressures that would crush starships. Others whose names Vyx'thal had memorized because he would likely be writing condolence letters to their families, and Maya Reeves, who looked impossibly small next to the others. General Thoskau, the Academy's headmaster and a veteran of the border wars, emerged from the shadows. His species, the Urgoth, were known for 3 things: their tactical brilliance, their ruthlessness, and their complete inability to feel empathy. Recruits, he began, his voice like grinding stone. Before you lies the Death Garden. 7 stages of increasing lethality, environmental hazards, combat scenarios, psychological stress tests, and endurance challenges that will push you beyond your theoretical limits. Some of you will die. This is acceptable. Some of you will quit. This is cowardice, but permitted. Those of you who complete all 7 stages will earn your place among the Coalition's elite. He paused, his gaze sweeping across them. Any questions? Maya raised her hand. The silence that followed was profound. Yes, Recruit Reeves, sir. Are we permitted to assist each other during the trials? Thoskau's facial plates shifted in what might have been surprise. The regulations do not forbid cooperation. However, most recruits find survival consumes their full attention. Understood, sir. Thank you. The general's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. With a gesture, the massive doors behind him began to open, revealing a tunnel that seemed to swallow light itself. Begin when ready, Thoskau said. May your gods show mercy, because this place will not. The Cortex twins charged forward immediately, their warrior culture demanding they face danger head-on. Jivara followed at a measured pace, his crystalline body already beginning to resonate at defensive frequencies. Others filed in with varying degrees of reluctance. Maya waited until she was last, took 3 deep breaths, and walked into the darkness. Vyx'thal watched from the observation deck, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed multiple camera feeds from within the garden. Beside him, Kren and a dozen other observers settled in for what would likely be a long, grim watch. Stage 1, the automated system announced. The Furnace. Duration, 2 hours. Survival rate, 53%. The feeds showed a massive chamber, easily 300 meters across, with walls that glowed cherry red. Temperature readout made Kren hiss in discomfort. 68 degrees, standard. Hot enough to boil water in some species' physiology. How is this even survivable? Someone whispered. Thermal suits, Vyx'thal explained, pointing to the equipment lockers visible in the feeds. They have to find them, don them, and navigate to the exit before heat exhaustion sets in. On screen, the Cortex twins were already struggling, their thick carapaces designed for cold worlds, not furnaces. Javara moved steadily, unbothered by heat that would cook most organic life. Others scattered, searching for the suits, for shade, for any advantage. Maya stood still in the center of the chamber, eyes closed. "What is she doing?" Kryn demanded. "She's wasting time." But Vyx'thal watched more carefully. Her chest rose and fell in measured rhythms. Her hands hung loose at her sides. And then, after 30 seconds that must have felt like an eternity, she opened her eyes and walked directly toward a section of wall that looked identical to all the others. She pressed her palm against it. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a cache of thermal suits. "How did she?" "She was listening," Vyx'thal murmured. "Airflow. The cooling systems for the suit storage would create a different acoustic signature." Maya pulled on a suit, sealed it, and then did something unexpected. She grabbed 4 more suits and walked toward the other recruits. She handed a suit to one of the Korthax twins, who stared at her with all 6 eyes. "Go," she said simply. "Help your sibling." She distributed the other suits to struggling recruits, keeping nothing for herself beyond what she wore. "Tactically foolish," Kryn observed. "She's created potential competition. Or allies," Vyx'thal countered. Stage 1 took 93 minutes to complete. All 12 recruits survived. The observers couldn't remember the last time that had happened. Stage 2, the Abyss, lived up to its name. A chasm so deep the bottom existed only as a theoretical concept, with platforms scattered across it like the teeth of some cosmic predator. Recruits had to cross using whatever means they could devise. The Selenite simply flew, his crystalline structure light enough for his natural levitation. Others jumped, climbed, swung on cables. Maya studied the layout for 5 full minutes before moving, and when she did, she didn't aim for the fastest route. She aimed for the safest one, helping 2 smaller recruits cross gaps they couldn't manage alone. "She's going to run out of time," Kryn said, checking the chronometer. But she didn't. She crossed with 4 minutes to spare, having lost no one. Stage 3 was where things got interesting. The combat maze. Automated defense systems, hostile drones and environmental hazards, all designed to test combat capability under stress. This was where recruits typically died. The feeds showed Maya entering a corridor, and immediately targeting lasers painted her chest. "She's done," someone whispered. The drones opened fire, and Maya moved. Not away. Toward. She slid under the first burst of plasma, rolled left as the second drone tracked her, and came up inside its firing arc. Her combat knife, standard issue but wickedly sharp, found the drone's sensor cluster. It died sparking. She didn't stop moving. Didn't pause to celebrate. The next drone died to a thrown knife that shouldn't have had the force to penetrate its armor, but somehow did because she'd aimed for a cooling vent. Vyx'thal leaned closer to his screen. "She's not just reacting, she's reading the patterns." "Impossible," Kryn said. "Those drones use randomized algorithms." "Randomized within parameters," Vyx'thal corrected. "And she's a predator species. They evolved to track patterns we can't even perceive." Maya cleared her section of the maze in 40 minutes, suffering only minor burns. The Korthax twins, powerful but straightforward, took twice as long and nearly bled out from plasma wounds. When Maya found them, struggling against a particularly vicious defensive turret, she could have passed by, could have saved her strength. Instead, she pulled a small device from her kit, a signal jammer, civilian grade, something she must have brought from home. She tossed it near the turret. Its targeting system went haywire, and in those 3 seconds of confusion, the twins pushed through. By the time Stage 4 began, even the cynical observers were paying attention. The drowning room. Exactly what it sounded like. A chamber that filled with liquid at increasing pressure while recruits solved a multi-stage puzzle to unlock the exit. The liquid wasn't water, it was caustic, and most species in the coalition couldn't hold their breath for more than a few minutes. Humans, Vyx'thal had learned during his xenobiology briefings, had an unusually high tolerance for breath holding. Something about an evolutionary path that included diving for food. Maya entered the chamber last, allowing the others to start on the puzzle while she studied the room's structure. When the liquid began to rise and recruits started panicking, she did something that made Kryn choke on his beverage. She started singing. Not loudly, not some battle hymn, just a soft, rhythmic melody that somehow carried through the liquid and the growing chaos. And incredibly, impossibly, the other recruits began to sync their breathing to her rhythm. Panic decreased, focus increased. The puzzle was solved with 30 seconds of air remaining. All 12 recruits survived Stage 4. This had never happened before. General Thossa's car himself arrived in the observation deck, his expression unreadable. "This human," he said, not looking away from the screens. "What is her psychological profile?" Vyx'thal pulled up her file. "Stable, no trauma markers. Grew up in a rural agricultural zone on Earth. No military family history. She applied to the academy on what her people call a whim." A whim, her application essay stated, and I quote, "I've always wanted to see what else is out there, and this seemed like the most fun way to do it." Thossa's laugh was like an avalanche. "Fun. She thinks this is fun. Sir, should we be concerned?" The general watched Maya help a exhausted Korthax to his feet, watched her check his wounds with practiced efficiency, watched her somehow produce a ration bar from her suit and hand it to him, despite regulations forbidding outside food. "Concerned? No, Commander. I think we should be terrified." Maya Reeves reached the halfway point of the Death Garden with 11 recruits still alive behind her, and somehow, incredibly, she was still smiling. Stage 5 was called the Silence, and veterans of the Death Garden spoke of it in whispers, if they spoke of it at all. The chamber was perfectly spherical, perfectly white, and perfectly soundless. No echo, no ambient noise, nothing. Recruits entered alone, separated from their companions, and faced complete sensory isolation while performing complex tactical calculations under time pressure. Most species experienced psychological collapse within 20 minutes. Vyx'thal watched his monitors as Maya entered her isolation sphere, the door sealing behind her, with a finality that made his stomach sacs clench. The holographic display showed her vitals, heart rate steady at 72 beats per minute. Respiration normal. Stress hormones elevated but within acceptable parameters. The tactical problem materialized on the walls around her. A three-dimensional starship engagement scenario requiring her to calculate firing solutions, predict enemy movements, and allocate resources across 14 different variables. She had 45 minutes. Most recruits who survived managed it in 43, pushed to their absolute limits by the crushing silence. Maya closed her eyes. "What is she doing now?" Kryn demanded, his scales flushing purple with agitation. "The clock is running." But Vyx'thal had begun to understand something about this impossible human. "She's centering herself. Watch." Maya's lips moved, forming words no microphone could capture in the soundless void. Her hands traced patterns in the air, fingers moving through some kind of routine. Then she opened her eyes, looked at the tactical problem, and began working. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, inputting calculations with a speed that seemed almost reckless. Firing solutions appeared, resource allocations shifted. Enemy movement predictions mapped across three-dimensional space. She finished in 18 minutes. 18. The door opened, and she walked out, blinking in the normal light, and immediately turned to check on the recruit emerging from the adjacent sphere. One of the Korthax twins, the smaller one who'd begun following Maya around like a devoted hound. His name was Groth, and his chitinous faceplates were vibrating with distress. "Breathe," Maya told him, placing a hand on his massive shoulder. "You're out. You made it. The silence can't hurt you anymore. How did you endure it?" Groth's voice was a subsonic rumble. The emptiness. The terrible quiet. Maya smiled. That same easy expression she'd worn while eating chicken before this nightmare began. "I grew up on a farm. You know what farms have lots of? Space. Quiet. Sometimes I'd go hours without hearing another human voice. I learned pretty quick that silence isn't empty if you know how to fill it. Fill it with what? Thoughts. Memories. Songs stuck in your head. One time I had this advertising jingle running on loop for 3 days straight. Drove me nuts. But at least it was something." She checked her chrono. "Come on. We've got maybe 10 minutes before stage 6, and I want everyone hydrated." She produced water containers from somewhere. Always producing things from somewhere. Vyx'thal was beginning to suspect she'd somehow smuggled in half a supply depot. General Thor's car stood beside Vyx'thal now, having remained in the observation deck for the past 2 hours. His presence made the other observers nervous, but he seemed fascinated by the human recruit. Her scores are exceptional, he rumbled. Stage 1, 94th percentile. Stage 2, 88th percentile. Stage 3, 99th percentile. Stage 4, perfect score. Stage 5, she just shattered the speed record by 11 minutes. She's also kept every other recruit alive, Vyx'thal added. That's unprecedented. It's inefficient, Vyx'thal said, but his tone suggested he didn't entirely believe his own words. She could have finished each stage faster alone. Could she though, sir? Look at stage 3. Those combat drones nearly overwhelmed Growth and his sibling. If they'd died, their bodies would have triggered additional defensive protocols. Maya would have had to fight through twice as many drones. By saving them, she saved herself time and ammunition. Vyx'thal's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting tactical altruism. I'm suggesting she's playing a different game than we designed, sir. Stage 6 was the Predator's run, and it was exactly what it sounded like. Recruits entered a sprawling wilderness environment, a manufactured jungle, complete with imported flora and very real fauna from a dozen Deathworlds. Somewhere in that 3-square-kilometer nightmare, each recruit had a specific objective to retrieve. Oh, and there were hunters. Actual predators. The Academy kept a stock of semi-domesticated kill beasts for exactly this purpose. They were fitted with neural limiters to prevent actual fatalities, but the pain, the fear, and the very real possibility of career-ending injuries remained. The recruits were given basic survival gear and one instruction: retrieve your objective and reach the extraction point. Time limit: 4 hours. Maya studied the equipment loadout with the same careful attention she'd given everything else. Knife, rope, basic medkit, flare gun with 3 charges, compass, water purification tablets. Adequate, she murmured, then looked at the other recruits. Listen up, we're going to do something stupid. Shorvar, the Selenite who'd been largely silent throughout the trials, chimed softly. Stupid is a poor survival strategy. Stupid to them, smart for us. Look, we each have an objective somewhere in that jungle. 12 objectives. 12 of us. 3 square kilometers. The statistical probability of our paths crossing is actually pretty high. So here's my proposal. We stick together, move as a unit, and retrieve objectives as we encounter them. That violates the spirit of the trial, Growth rumbled, though he didn't sound opposed to the idea. Does it violate the regulations? Maya countered. Because I checked. Again. The rules state we must retrieve our specific objective and reach extraction. Nothing about doing it alone. Silence. Then one of the other recruits, a raptor-like Vyx'thal named Shrill, clicked her beak in what might have been laughter. The human makes a valid point. Besides, those kill beasts hunt in packs. Why shouldn't we? The vote was unanimous. 12 recruits entered the jungle as a unit, and the observers in the command deck collectively lost their minds. This is cheating, someone shouted. It's collaboration, another argued. Vyx'thal raised one massive hand and silence fell. The regulations are clear. They have violated no rules. Let them proceed. Vyx'thal pulled up the jungle map, tracking the 12 biosignatures moving in tight formation through the undergrowth. They're moving slower than individual recruits typically do, but safer, Kryn observed. Look, 3 contacts approaching from the northeast. Kill beasts. Mature specimens. The feeds showed the pack's perspective as 3 hulking predators, each massing around 200 kilos of muscle and fury, detected the recruit formation and began their approach. These creatures, native to a world designated Resh 9, were apex hunters with thermal vision, scent tracking, and enough bite force to crack starship hull plating. They expected scattered, panicked prey. They got Maya Reeves with a plan. Growth, Grix, frontline. Javara, get high and be our eyes. Shrill, you're fastest, so you're bait. Everyone else, spread out in a concave formation. When I give the signal, collapse inward. These things hunt by isolating targets. We don't get isolated. The plan was insane. It was also brilliant. Shrill darted forward, her raptor-like physiology making her a blur of feathers and speed. The lead kill beast took the bait, charging after what it perceived as easy prey. Shrill led it directly into the concave formation, then leaped straight up, her species' powerful legs launching her 3 meters into the air. The kill beast ran directly into Growth and Grix, who'd braced themselves into an immovable wall of chitin. The impact stunned the predator. Maya was already moving, sliding under its belly with her knife, not to kill but to disable. A precise cut to the neural limiter control. The beast's aggression programming shut down. It backed away, confused but unharmed. The other 2 kill beasts, seeing their pack leader retreat, reassessed. They circled but didn't attack. Pack hunters were smart. They didn't fight battles they couldn't win. Objectives, Maya called out, checking her tactical display. I'm reading 2 within 50 meters. Whose? 2 recruits confirmed. The group moved as one, retrieved both objectives, and kept going. They encountered 4 more predator packs over the next 3 hours, each time the same strategy: unity, coordination, controlled aggression, without unnecessary violence. The kill beasts learned quickly that this group wasn't prey. There was something else, something that fought back intelligently. By the time the recruits reached the extraction point, all 12 objectives had been retrieved. All 12 recruits were alive, mostly uninjured, and they'd completed the stage in 3 hours and 17 minutes. The observation deck was chaos. Observers arguing, debating whether this should count, whether the entire trial needed redesigning, whether cooperation had somehow invalidated the test's purpose. Though Siskar silenced them with a look. The Death Garden tests survival capability under extreme conditions. These recruits demonstrated superior survival capability through tactical cooperation. The stage is passed. Stage 7 begins in 1 hour. Vyx'thal pulled up Maya's profile again, reading through her background for the dozenth time. Daughter of farmers. No military training. No special operations experience. Her entrance exam scores had been good but not exceptional. She'd been accepted to the academy based on raw potential and what the selection committee had called an unusual psychological resilience. They'd had no idea. Commander, Kren said quietly. Stage 7 is the breaking point. Vyx'thal knew. Everyone knew. Stage 7 was where the Death Garden earned its name. The breaking point wasn't a physical challenge. It was pure psychological warfare. Recruits were exposed to their deepest fears, their worst memories, their most profound failures, all manufactured by advanced neural interface technology. The AI running the simulation had access to their psychological profiles, their medical histories, their personal files. It knew exactly where to cut to make them bleed. Survival meant enduring. Passing meant enduring. And still completing a complex task while your mind was being systematically dismantled. The 1 hour rest period passed too quickly. Maya spent it doing something Vyx'thal found deeply strange. She taught the other recruits a game, some kind of word association exercise from Earth. They sat in a circle, and she made them laugh. Actually laugh. In the staging area of the most feared trial in Coalition space, this human created joy. When the hour ended, the 12 recruits stood and faced the final door. General Siskar himself delivered the briefing. Stage 7. The breaking point. You will enter individual chambers. You will face scenarios designed to exploit your psychological vulnerabilities. You will experience fear, pain, grief, rage. These experiences will feel absolutely real. Some of you will break. This is expected. There is no shame in withdrawal. He paused, his ancient eyes sweeping across them. However, if you endure, if you maintain cognitive function, you will find a puzzle terminal in your chamber. Solve the puzzle, input the solution, exit through the door that appears. Time limit, 2 hours. Any questions? Maya raised her hand. Again. Recruit Reeves. Sir, after we complete stage 7, is there anything else? Any hidden 8th stage, any surprise test? Thus, Carr's expression might have been respect. No recruit. 7 stages. No more. Why do you ask? Just want to know if I should save energy or if this is the final push. she smiled. Final push it is then. Thank you, sir. The doors opened, 12 chambers, 12 recruits. The feeds showed them entering, sitting in the neural interface chairs, accepting the connection leads, and then, one by one, their nightmares began. Vyx'thal watched Growth's feed first. The Korthax saw his home colony burning, his family dead, himself alone and unable to save them. He roared in anguish, his massive body straining against the chair's restraints. Shavara experienced the shattering of his crystalline structure, the worst fate for a selenite, conscious dissolution into formless fragments. Shrill relived the destruction of her flight wings, grounded forever, unable to touch the sky. Each nightmare was perfectly calibrated, perfectly cruel. Vyx'thal switched to Maya's feed, dreading what he'd see. The human sat calmly in her chair, eyes open, watching something only she could see. The neural activity monitor showed intense engagement. Whatever she was experiencing, it was hitting hard, but she wasn't screaming, wasn't thrashing. Her hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white, but she was breathing in that same measured rhythm she'd used before the trials began. What is she seeing? Kryn whispered. They had access to all the feeds, visual and neural. Vyx'thal pulled up her scenario. Earth, her farm, but everything was dead. Crops withered, animals gone, her family nowhere to be found. She was alone in a wasteland that had once been home, and a voice, her own voice, told her it was her fault. She'd abandoned them, left Earth for selfish adventure, and in her absence, everything she loved had died. It was devastating. Perfectly targeted psychological torture. Maya stood from the chair in her simulation, walked through the dead fields and spoke. No, just that. One word. The simulation tried to intensify, showed her parents' graves, showed her childhood home collapsing. No, she said again, louder. This isn't real. Earth is fine, my family is fine. And even if they weren't, even if the absolute worst had happened, wallowing in guilt wouldn't honor them. They'd want me to keep moving, keep living, keep trying. She found the puzzle terminal hidden in the simulation's ruined barn. Sat down, began working while phantom voices screamed accusations at her. She solved it in 47 minutes. One by one the other recruits found their puzzles. Growth solved his while phantom flames consumed everything around him. Shavara reformed his shattered consciousness through sheer will. Shrill imagined her wings whole and flew in her mind even as the simulation insisted she was broken. All 12 recruits, battered and traumatized, solved their puzzles. All 12 doors opened, all 12 recruits stood, disconnected from the neural interfaces, and walked into the final chamber, where General Thorskar waited. Congratulations, he said simply. You have completed the Death Garden. You are the first group in the Academy's history to do so with 0 casualties. Silence. Then Growth let out a war cry that rattled the walls. The others joined in, each species' celebration mixing into a cacophony of relief and triumph. Maya stood quietly, tears streaming down her face, but smiling. Just smiling. Vyx'thal met her in the medical bay 2 hours later, after the mandatory psychological debriefs and physical examinations. She was sitting on a bed, drinking something hot from a container she'd somehow procured. Tea, she explained, seeing his questioning look. Chamomile? Helps with stress. Recruit Reeves. Maya, I need to ask you something. Shoot, Commander. Why? Why help the others? You could have completed each stage faster alone, earned higher individual scores. Instead, you sacrificed personal glory for group survival. Why? Maya sipped her tea, considering. You know what the scariest part of the Death Garden was for me? Not the heat, not the combat. Not even the psychological torture at the end. What then? The idea of being alone through all of it. Humans are social creatures, Commander. We're pack animals just like those kill beasts in Stage 6. We survive better together. We think better together. We're stronger together. Sure, I could have gone faster alone maybe, but I also might have missed something crucial. Made a fatal mistake, second-guessing myself in the silence, because there was no one to reality check my thinking. She set down her tea. Besides, if I'd left them behind, if I'd prioritized my own success over their survival, I'd have proven myself exactly the kind of selfish operator special operations doesn't need. The whole point of elite units is trust, teamwork, knowing your squad has your back. I just started building that trust a little earlier than most. Vyx'thal settled onto the adjacent bed, his bulk making it creak. You terrify me, Maya Reeves. Yeah? She grinned. Good. I'd hate to be boring. Not because you're dangerous. Though you are. You terrify me, because you make me question everything we thought we knew about elite training, about competition, about what makes someone truly exceptional. Commander, can I tell you a secret? Please. Back on Earth, before I left, my grandmother told me something. She said the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall down. They're the ones who fall down and then help someone else get back up before dealing with their own bruises. I think she was right. 3 days later, at the graduation ceremony for Death Garden survivors, General Thoss's car stood before the assembled academy and announced the results. 12 recruits entered. 12 survived. This is unprecedented. Moreover, they achieved the highest collective scores in Death Garden history. Therefore, I am authorizing the formation of an experimental special operations unit. They will train together, deploy together, and serve together. Recruit Reeves, you will lead this unit with the rank of Junior Lieutenant. Choose your team name. Maya stepped forward, glanced back at her squad, her friends, her pack, and smiled. Pack hunters, sir. We're pack hunters. Vyx'thal watched from the observation balcony as the 12 recruits, representing 8 species from across the coalition, stood together and accepted their new assignment. He thought about statistics, about probability, about the impossible human who'd eaten fried chicken before walking into hell and come out the other side singing. Commander, Cronin said beside him, do you think she knew that she could actually do it? Vyx'thal thought about Maya's application essay, about doing things for fun, about the quiet confidence of someone who'd grown up on a death world and never realized how remarkable that made her. I don't think she knew, Lieutenant. I think she just refused to consider the alternative. Below, Maya Reeves laughed at something Gruth said, punched his massive shoulder in what passed for human affection, and led her new team out of the ceremony hall toward whatever came next. The Death Garden was supposed to prove that some challenges were insurmountable, that some tests were designed to break you. Maya Reeves had walked in, refused to be broken, and brought 11 others with her through sheer stubborn insistence that together was always better than alone. Vyx'thal made a note in his personal log, reevaluate all assumptions about human psychology, pack behavior, and the tactical applications of optimism. Also, he added, learn to make that chicken recipe. If he was going to work with humans more, he should probably understand their approach to pre-combat nutrition. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a farm on Earth, Maya's grandmother smiled without knowing why, and continued tending her garden where things grew instead of died. The pack hunters deployed on their first mission 3 weeks later, but that, as they say, is another story.